Good morning. Welcome to the Friday, January 22nd meeting of the Westwood School Building Committee. I'm going to start with a roll call attendance. Ken Aries. Brian Baer.
Here.
Allison Borchers.
Here.
Chris Coleman. Sarah Cronin. I don't think she's here yet. John Cummings.
Here.
Charlie Donahue.
Here.
Pam Dukeman.
Here.
Mary Kate Ferreira.
Here.
Jen Flanders.
Here.
I don't see Abby Hanscom yet.
She texted me some technical problems. She'll be here in a sec.
Okay, thanks. Nancy Hyde.
Here.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Here.
Josepha Jowdy.
Here.
Carol Lewis.
Here.
Michelle Miller.
Here.
Tony Mullins.
Here.
Emily Parks.
Here.
And Amanda Phillips. I don't see her quite yet. So, okay, great. So first, I'd like to recognize that there's a live stream to provide real-time public access to the activities of the School Building Committee, which is available online at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live. And this meeting is also being recorded for later broadcast on Westwood Media Center's platform. And thank you, Connor and Westwood Media Center, as always. I think Amanda has joined, so.
Hi.
Hi, okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'm actually gonna skip the chair's update because we've got a lot to cover today. And I think we're just gonna cover everything I would have covered in the update in the presentation. So we're gonna jump right into discussion items. All right, I think, Rob, it's probably easier if I share my screen. The presentation you sent last night is the same,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna try and figure out if I can do this.
You can do it. We have faith.
Can I do it?
You
Can everyone see this?
Not yet.
There it
There
is.
we go.
Is it there? Are we good? Okay. Okay, so here's our agenda. We're going to talk about the schedule. We're going to talk about the value management overview, basically how much did we save in this past couple weeks on the budget. And in connection with that, we'll go through, we had, as you recall, various working groups, and we'll go through their recommendations. And that's pretty much it. So jumping right into the project schedule. So as everybody knows, this is our current schedule. I think when we originally started this process, we were thinking that we would hold a special, this is of course pre-COVID, we were thinking that we would hold a special town meeting in March March of 2021, just for this project, follow that up with the April normal town election ballot and move from there. Clearly COVID has made the special town meeting impossible. So currently we are scheduled to we have a warrant article placeholder on the May town meeting with a June special ballot to follow. That would allow the architects to begin design and bid documents, design development, and create the bid documents for contractors. We would start construction in July of 2022. We would take occupancy of February 2024, and we would complete everything, including demolition of the existing Hanlon School and the fields, by August 2024. So there's some disadvantages to this, and we've had a number of people, some members of the select board, some members from other boards, and just residents sort of raise concerns about this schedule with us. And we've been listening, and I agree that there are disadvantages, and some of these disadvantages are, so first, town meeting clearly has a lot of other business. It has the annual town business as well. And so if we include our project at town meeting, it would probably require a 2-night town meeting, which is not ideal for logistics. It's more expensive. It's harder to coordinate getting people. More importantly, it's not ideal for public participation. It's difficult for people to go to 2 nights. If you want to support the school, you need to make sure you go on the right night. So logistically, I think a 2-night town meeting has challenges. In addition, and probably more importantly, with the pandemic ongoing, there still is a fair amount of economic uncertainty. and it's still a major concern for many residents, and we're very aware of this. We're very sensitive to that. We certainly don't want to put residents in a position where they feel uncomfortable. In addition, the vaccines are here. We're starting to hear of people getting them. They're rolling them out, but they're not widely distributed. And so I think the format will still be limited in the spring, particularly, as I said, with town meeting. Following along with that, it's difficult. These pandemic restrictions are making it more difficult for us to reach all residents, to educate all residents about this project. Particularly, for example, if, in normal times, we would have gone and made a presentation at the Westwood Senior Center or at Fox Hill Village or the Westwood Youth and Women's Club. We can't do that kind of outreach right now. It's not organic, it's not possible. And so we're finding it a little bit difficult to reach residents without current school children. That's compounded by, it's always a busy spring schedule in Westwood. There's multiple town campaigns going on. There's not a lot of time between now and May. And so that's increasing our difficulties in sort of getting the word out about this project in the way you would need to really make people understand the benefits of it and the realities of it. And finally, the school district is really prioritizing trying to get all of the kids back in school before the end of the school year. It's taking up a significant amount of time of the district's capacity and time this winter and spring. And typically this building project would be, number one on the district's agenda, but COVID has pushed that a little bit. And really, again, we're trying to focus to get all of the kids back in school by the end of the school year. So for all of these reasons, we started having discussions about moving the vote to the fall and what would that look like. So just to give you a timeline, this would mean we would have a special town meeting in October, followed by a special ballot vote in October or November. Then, assuming that passed, the architects would move into the design and bid document phase. We would start construction in December of 2022. We would occupy in July of 2024 and have the site fully completed by November of 2024. So there's clearly a lot of advantages to this, right? First, as I mentioned, this would be a special town meeting devoted just to the school building project. We'd really be able to give residents the time at town meeting that this project deserves and able to answer all questions and address all feedback. Vaccinations will hopefully be fully rolled out for adults at that point, which means that COVID restrictions may have eased. This makes more community participation possible, which clearly is the goal and has been the goal of this project from the start. We also would have more time and opportunities to educate the public about this project, particularly if those COVID restrictions are eased somewhat, and we could maybe meet in person, or at least, put a 3D model in the library if the library is back open so people could go check it out. And finally, we're hopeful in the fall will be more clarity around the economic landscape. So those are the advantages of moving this to the fall. There are some disadvantages. The first one isn't really a disadvantage, it's more of an administrative issue, and that revolves around the MSBA. We have certain deadlines. For example, our feasibility period expires in the middle of summer, and there's a certain time frame between when the MSBA votes on our funding to when we have to have the town vote. Those would be affected if we moved the fall. So given that we were considering this option, we had initial conversations with the MSBA about this issue. And what they told us is that they're currently working with a number of other communities and towns to change project timelines because of the pandemic, that they understand our concerns, they think our concerns are valid, and that they have suggested we submit a formal request to them to extend the feasibility period and the time frame between the MSBA vote and the town vote. And based on our conversations with them, we're hopeful that they would approve this request. Clearly, we haven't submitted that yet because this is a discussion for this group to have today. But assuming, if this group makes the decision to move forward in this direction, we would submit that request as soon as possible to the MSBA. And as I said, based on our conversations, we're hopeful they would approve it. So that's not, as I said, I'm putting that aside. I don't see that as a disadvantage. I see that really just as an administrative matter that we need to work through. But what will be impacted are the project cost and the project schedule if we move this to the fall. By moving it to the fall, it basically means that Compass and our architect, Doran Whittier, will have to really put pencils down by May, maybe sooner, just around in that time period, and not pick them up again until the fall. And because of that, the architect's cost estimator has estimated that the delay will cost about $700,000 in addition to the normal cost of the project. So, you know, the escalation fee and just the stop and start will create an additional $700,000 line item to the budget. At one point we had heard $1 million, but I think the latest number we heard was 700,000, and our architects and Compass seem to think that that's a good number.
If I could just clarify,
Sure.
it's the cost is really attributed to the extension of the project schedule. So having it shift out the additional, months on the project in terms of the start of the construction and the completion date, those are it's that's causing the increase in the cost.
Great, thanks, Rob. The second disadvantage is an impact to the project schedule. As you see here, we're going to start construction in December of 2022, and starting construction in, I think a lot of people on this call will know, starting construction in December is not good for a number of reasons. This also leaves us with a fairly tight timeline between the start of construction and when we want to take occupancy. There's no room for error really in this construction timeline, which I think makes a lot of people nervous. Rob or Tim, do you want to add anything on those 2 points on the construction start?
I think people do know what December start means. If we have a year like this year, it's not as bad, but if we have a year like we've had, in the past, you can basically shut down for the winter. And as you mentioned, Mayor, and I think it's an important point, we don't have any flexibility within that schedule if it is shut down because of the weather. So it was essentially we've used up whatever slack we had in it. So that's just, I think you made those points, and that's how I would reiterate them.
Great, thanks, Tim. So what we've done is given those disadvantages, we've actually come up with a third option that retains the advantages of option 2, but sort of mitigates and really addresses the disadvantages. It basically, option 3 will keep the project on schedule and on budget. And to do that, what we'd like to do, or what would like to discuss today with this group, is at this spring town meeting to ask the town for bridge funding. This will be an amount, I think we're looking at around $1.6 million. We do anticipate having about $290,000 remaining in our feasibility budget. Right now, that's all unallocated. So we could put that toward this bridge funding and go to the town for about 1.3 million. But at the spring, we'd ask them for 1.3 million. And this is really, it's almost as if we're taking this portion, it is as if we're taking this portion from the amount we would ask for in October and just fronting it. And what this would allow us to do is to pay allow the architect and Compass to continue to work on the design documents during this period, during the May, June, July, August, September, October period. So when we come to the town vote in October, and assuming it's approved, we can go immediately to the bid documents. That allows us to start construction on July 2022, to move in February 2024, and to complete the site in August 2024, which is the current schedule that we're on. So I just want to be clear that this 1.6 million isn't in addition to the project cost. It's just taking a piece of the project cost and asking for it sooner. I also want to make clear that with this, there's also no $700,000 escalation. So we would be saving that amount with this scenario. Now, we believe that this project will pass in the fall, but I think we do need to be clear-eyed about the fact that, we're asking for this 1.6 million before the town vote. So as with all of the funds that we've spent so far, there would be the risk of a no vote at town meeting. Having said that, we would have the design documents at the end of this. So we would have something for the money if we did have a no vote. But, I'm really hopeful that this will pass and that this will allow us to stay on budget and on schedule. And that's really, I think, summarizing option 3. So what I want to do is, I know this is a lot of information all at once. So I want to open it up and have a discussion about these options, what people think. And I would like, if we can, to take a vote on this today, because as I said, we do want to make the request to the MSBA, but why don't we just open it up and allow people to start talking? I will leave the timeline up. Thoughts?
All right, I have a question.
Okay.
The $1.3 million, will that be an override or will that be from the budget of the town?
Nope. Pam, do you mind just explaining a little bit?
Sure. So the request would need to be a borrowing authorization. So it would be a 2/3 vote required at town meeting. It would not require an override. And if this were to pass, the borrowing authorization, just so people know, we would only go out with a short-term note. We would not be doing or issuing a long-term bond because we would be waiting until the vote happens in the fall on the full project. And at that point, we would roll this portion of that project into the larger project when we issue the bonds. So it would not require an override at this point because of the amount of the request. You could ask for this to be on an override when the other vote would occur in the fall for the remaining portion of the project. I do just want to point out, though, I know, Maya, you said about having money left over from the feasibility study. So that was a very specific vote. As people know, when we authorize borrowing, the language is very specific on what can happen with that money. And that vote was very specific to feasibility study over. So I really don't think, I think it's important for you to talk with the community that you have not used all of the funding that was authorized, but I don't think you can net any savings there over to what you might need for the next phase, which is the design phase. So I think your vote would need to be the full amount that you're looking at, about the 1.6 million.
Okay.
And just to follow up on that, so people know, the vote on the feasibility, the 1.75 million, was an authorization for the town to borrow up to that amount, net of any MSBA reimbursement. So as you've been moving forward in this project over the last year and a half, as this group approves bills every month, there's been a great job of, when the bills are paid, getting that right into MSBA and getting their reimbursement as we go. So I'd like to thank Town Accountant Marie O'Leary for her work on that, and the team at Compass. It's been a really smooth process. When this group approves bills every month, they go right into MSBA and they are sending us their 35% share of that project. So we have not to date issued a bond for the 1.75 million. We have issued just a short-term note, a lower amount, because we're also getting in this reimbursement from MSBA. So just, I guess, a long way, I just want to make sure people know there's not 290,000 going to be sitting available in cash at the end. We issued a short-term note, net of what we think we'd get in from MSBA. Again, we would roll that note and not issue it long-term until the project was approved in the fall. And then we would roll that all into longer term bonds for the school. So I just don't think you can take that savings. It's important, and I think helpful to explain to the community you didn't use the full authorization that you had, but I don't think you can roll that over into this second phase.
Okay, thanks, Pam. That's a really important clarification. So thanks for making that.
Follow-up question on that one. And Pam, so in the fall, assuming this passes, will this 1.6 million be absorbed into this project? Or is it a standalone separate 1.6 million?
So, well, you'd have to vote it separate this town meeting.
Yep.
And then depending how you voted the project in the fall, I mean, you could vote if we're talking in terms of the $88 million authorization, you could try to combine that to, you could vote the full amount, it would include this, or you could vote the net amount. As Maya said in the beginning, you're really just pulling forward a portion of that original full vote, pulling it forward to the spring.
Can I follow up while Pam's on this? Pam, what is the impact on the annual debt service cost if we approve this? So how much of our resources of the town would be applied annually to $1.6 million borrowing?
So if this was approved, in the initial year FY22 budget, really nothing, because we're going to issue just a short-term ban.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to have any full debt service on this. And again, we wouldn't do that until we knew what was happening with the full project. So for design money, if the full project gets approved, we can issue a long-term bond for the same term as that overall project, which would be we'd be looking at a 30-year term. If the full project doesn't get approved, the design limits on how long you can pay that off are shorter.
Can I ask a question about that 1.6 million? If the project does not get approved, God forbid, I'm assuming that 1.6 million is not going to that won't impact the school budget, right?
No, we would pay for that out of our debt service budget.
Okay.
Yep.
And how much would that become, Pam? That's the number I'm trying to get to.
Well, again, that would depend on what the length of the terms are that we can pay it off. So I guess I can't really answer that.
You can't, okay. No, okay.
But as far as for the FY22 budget and anything we would not have to take any action, because we would only be issuing a ban, and we would not be doing that until the summer.
How do all of these options affect resident taxes? Are they all the same? Does everything go up in 2022, or?
Because we're voting earlier on a smaller amount, does that affect taxes earlier?
If you vote this amount earlier, and it's really just a pull forward from the full project, and the full project gets approved, there is no difference in impact on taxes. There will be an impact on taxes from the full vote. I think everyone's clear on that. And it's not all going to happen in 22. This project, if the full amount is voted for $88 million range, first of all, some of that's going to come from the state. So it won't be fully paid for by the town. And when the impact happens on taxes is going to depend on how we phase in the bond on this. We won't go out in one large bond right in the beginning. We have to match that a bit to the timing of the project and the reimbursement from MSBA. So there's no change in taxes from doing this piece ahead.
So I guess, thanks for this explanation. I guess as I hear the pros and cons of these personally, I'm supportive of option 3. I think I've expressed in other meetings, always very worried about the calendar continuing to slip. I know COVID happened and that happened, but I like the fact that we can, to your point, I think we heard here, if we go with option 2, who knows, right? That could slip again. And I just don't want to be telling people this building is going to open in 2025 if things got slipped. So I guess personally, I like option 3. It saves, I think it does financially, it makes sense. Obviously there's some risk if it doesn't get approved in the fall. But I think measuring that risk of these personally, I think I'm supportive, and I think that, and I like keeping the schedule on track.
I agree with Tony. And I also think that it gives us more time to get this information out to the townspeople and to mount a campaign to get this passed.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I like option 3 because I feel like the momentum around this project was great at the beginning with the communication. And even though the school committee has continued to keep that momentum going, I just don't think as many people have been reached because of COVID. So I think we still need that time, especially from conversations I've been having. I feel like the families who have very young children who aren't in school yet, whose kids would potentially attend this school, I think they're under the impression that, oh, of course, anything for the school is going to get improved. You know, we moved to the town for the school system. So I don't think that we've been able to reach that group yet to understand the importance of getting out to vote for it.
I would support option 3 as well. I would say that I like the idea of keeping the momentum going. And you know what? Having the vote in the spring just on this relatively small amount is a good touch point for the public, for the town. It keeps them informed. I mean, again, we've had, it is, as many have already said, a struggle right now with COVID and the communication. But having this on town meeting in the spring for this relatively small compared to the entire project amount, it is great. Another great way to keep this project transparent, to keep folks in the loop as to what's going on. So, and I too agree that we don't want to push this into 2025. I mean, remember, we still have to send the kids to school over the next few years, and we want to get this done as quickly as possible before we have to start throwing good money after bad if things really start to fall apart, if you know what I mean, in terms of the structure of our building. So I would say option 3.
This is Brian. I agree with what I've heard so far. May I ask, Emily, I suppose, if you see any impacts on the current educational year? May I mentioned that the emphasis on this year too. So do any of these scenarios, do you think, how do they affect the this year's educational plans?
I guess I don't necessarily see an impact on this year's educational plans, other than what Maya said, which is that, you know, this year has shaped up quite differently than we might have imagined. And we have a lot of things that we're working on for this spring, you know, and ideally I would want to be able to give my full devotion to getting out and talking to the community about the building project. And that really it just hasn't been possible this year. So, you know, my preference, to be honest, would be to make sure that the district's capacity is really focused on what we can do to get kids into school this spring. And so, you know, option 3 would certainly be helpful, or option 2 would be helpful in that sense. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question, Brian, or is there something?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So, because I want to make sure that, I think everyone probably would say the same, but we want to make sure that the district also in the educational planning piece of this project has the bandwidth to put towards what's necessary to meet this schedule.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I have to say that I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because you know, time is getting short here leading up to the spring town meeting. And, you know, it's been a challenging year in a number of ways. I will say that in terms of educational planning, I like option 3 quite a bit better. The fact that there really isn't slack in the schedule in option 2 makes me nervous. You know, I think, you know, despite everybody's best efforts, often in big construction projects, there are some unanticipated delays. And in a school project, those delays can be very, you know, significant in terms of the educational operation. So it's a whole lot better to be opening a school in September and moving kids in at the start of the year. You know, I've experienced the opposite, where we're trying to move everybody from one school to another in February. And that is clearly way more challenging. And in this case, we'd be consolidating 2 schools. You know, so there are tremendous advantages to being able to start a new school year in a new building. So
To clarify, though, this schedule has us moving in February 2024, option 3.
Well, I guess what I was nervous about that we would get even further out.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, and I have to say, this does have us moving in February 2024. I don't know. So I guess maybe in my mind, I'm thinking, but what if there was a delay there?
Right.
Right? Like we can
You're
still
going to pray
get
for
in.
delays.
I know. I guess I shouldn't already be factoring in delays, but I'm thinking we could still be moving in the fall.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
think your point's a good one. I mean, if we have a delay in option 3,
Yeah.
then we would sort of push it, and move in the fall, which I know would be an educator's preference. If we have a delay in option 2,
Yeah.
then we're moving in November or December or January, which is probably the least ideal.
Well,
so
and
I think
I experienced a project Mayo where we thought we were going to, you have to start preparing to move. We were literally packing boxes. And then as the delays emerged, we're staying, and so it got very confusing. I think that option 3 would really, it would just provide, I think, a lot of peace of mind in terms of the schedule.
I support option 3 as well for all the reasons everybody else stated. But I also like the idea that we'll have the vote for the bridge funding in the spring, because I feel like that'll be a nice opportunity to kind of get a pulse of like where the community stands. And we could use that feedback from town meeting to, provide more kind of targeted outreach surrounding the campaign. So that's kind of appealing to me.
Right. And the campaign is the key word, with option 1 right now, there isn't time really to create that groundswell that we need. And we want to really be very, have a very clear and path to making sure that this project passes. And we want to get everyone on board, and there's a lot to do. So option 3 gives us time to breathe, because we have been so heavily focused again on ensuring that kids are in school, addressing the COVID issues. So if we go to option 3, we can really put together a good process to hopefully ensure that this whole project passes. So
Carol, do you have any, sorry.
No.
You have any idea of when you're going to start your campaign?
What's to say we haven't already started? No, just kidding. We are right now in the process of pulling together some volunteers to get moving. So we have, it's going to require quite a web of volunteers, but I would say in the next few days, we'll have our sort of our leadership group. So I would say we're going to get started very shortly.
Great,
thanks. So
sounds like Giuseppe just volunteered.
She did. She's going to run it.
She's going to be it. Yeah, she's running the whole thing.
Thank you, Giuseppe.
I'm conscious of time. We have a lot of value engineering stuff to get through. Does anyone have a differing opinion? Is anyone not in favor of option 3 or wants to sort of talk about another option?
Yes, I would.
Okay, go ahead.
So in looking at this and thinking about the spring town meeting, our expectations are clearly to have an outdoor town meeting again. And there are challenges with the numbers of people that can be handled with that. But that being said, we were successful last June. So it shapes an interesting town meeting that I think the school committee needs to think about. So my question would be, if there were not the outcome that was sought at the town meeting under option 3, would the school committee be considering option 4 and use the remaining mitigation money that you have from the University Station development agreement that the town entered into? I think you've got a little over $2 million there. Would you consider that? And so place that question. And another question I have for Tim, is this really under the purview of the school building committee, or is this decision really the school committee's decision? Even though I think this discussion is great, I'm just wondering, is the MSBA expecting this kind of decision to come from the school building committee? So 2 parts to that.
I can speak to the second question. I had a conversation with the MSBA about exactly that question and sort of who should be authorizing this. And the woman I spoke with suggested recommended, I should say, that the SBC address this, because the SBC does have a select board representative on it. All 5 school committee members are on it. And I think, and the town administrator is on the SBC. And I think those are the key players from the MSBA's perspective. So she really recommended that the SBC vote on this, and that we have the support of the vote going into the request to the MSBA. And that's why we're bringing it to the SBC and not to the school committee.
Okay, so
Tim, do you
part of
want
my
to?
question is option 4.
Yeah.
Did you want, I could jump in on the question about.
Yeah, you want to address the mitigation?
Yeah, so if that were the case, if the town doesn't vote in favor on an option 3, I would not advise using the mitigation money for this, and I would go to option 2. I mean, first of all, we're in such uncertain times right now, and the issues I wouldn't say that just because we have a vaccine right now, that all of these issues with COVID are going to go away over the next year. That's me being Debbie Downer, but I don't believe it. So I think that it's important that we not spend the money for this project, or take that money out of the mitigation fund. I also think that if it's voted down, to go ahead and say, well, we don't really care what the town thinks. We're just use our own money. I don't think that's a good path to take. We have another bigger vote to take in the spring. So from an optics standpoint, I don't think that would be a smart move. I would also say that we want to hold on to that money for the same reason I spoke about just a few minutes ago, which is this school is not going to be built and done for a couple of years at least. We still have, I'm sure there are many unforeseeable issues that we may have with that building, with the Hanlon building, and with others. So I would suggest we hold on to that mitigation fund, and if we don't pass this in if option 3 doesn't fly, I would go back to option 2. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Carol. That is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Again, I don't want to cut off conversation, but at the same time, I do want to move if we can.
Can I just ask quickly, Maya? So if option 3 is approved, we would have bond counsel write that article for the warrant. So we would just need to have, the amount and specifically what it's for. And is it the understanding that that would be eligible for the MSBA reimbursement?
If the vote passes in the fall, it will be eligible for reimbursement. If the vote doesn't pass, then it is not eligible because it was never authorized by the town to be part of the MSBA project.
Okay.
But if it does pass, then yes. Tim, am I keep me honest here? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
And do we have enough time to rewrite the article that's going before the FinCom?
It hasn't really been written, John. It was a placeholder.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had the article written for the large vote when that was originally going forward. So we would have to get to bond counsel right away, and they could revise that to what this is. But they write, design articles all the time. So they would be able to do that quickly. Yes, John.
All right.
Just
Thanks, Tim.
quickly on that article, if we could get a copy of that I don't think it needs to MSBA approval, but it would be good to just keep them in the loop on that wording.
Yeah, and Tim, I think if you can help us get the number to Pam.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So do you need a motion to vote on this?
I do. I'm going to move up the action items. So why don't I get a motion? This would be a motion to vote on option 3, which is town vote meeting for bridge funding in May, town vote meeting for the entire project in October of 2021, and the shift in the schedule is shown on the slide. So can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call. Ken Aries.
Yes on option 3.
Brian Baer.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes, I support option 3.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes on 3.
Pam?
Yes.
Mary Kate?
Yes.
Yes.
Jen? Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
I'll hold for a moment.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes on option 3.
Tony?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I am a yes. Circling back to Nancy.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, motion is carried. So we are moving into value engineering. Okay, so this slide should look familiar. This is what we showed you on December 11th. The real number we should focus on here is the 504,791 number. Can people see when I move my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so this number right here. This is the amount that our estimate came in over our target construction cost. So when we were going into value engineering, this is sort of the amount we were looking to save. So I'm going to move on. As you recall,
May I ask one question?
Sure.
So that 500,000,
Yep.
right? I know you say it's a target, but I mean, did we all agree of a particular target? Because we didn't really get any numbers until December. So anything beforehand was like a swag, right?
We did agree on a target project cost of 88.1 million. We did agree to that in a meeting. And I can't remember which meeting, but we can certainly pull the minutes and show, or the video. And that's where the 70 target construction cost came from. They backed out an estimate of targets of soft costs of 17.8 million. And that's how we got that target construction cost of 70.
Right, and I agree, this is an important exercise to do, but I mean, we're under no agreement to do 70,381. I mean, the difference between 70, what, plus 5, 70,800,000. That's an arbitrary number that, I mean, we're not obligated to any committee or any vote that we've taken. It's just a suggested number, right?
I think we do have a maximum amount that we voted.
So,
but
Mayor, let me just add a couple pieces of information. So in the PSR, the $88.1 million was was stated as the maximum district's maximum amount for the project to MSBA.
So who came up with that, Ken?
That's the estimate in the PSR submission. So that there was an estimate, and then we worked out a project cost at that time.
PSR is what?
PSR was preferred solution. That was the June vote for the submission to MSBA.
Okay.
But just to quickly clarify, that number came from, John, from the schemes that were in play back then in May and June. And we did have estimators look at them. Obviously, they were just sketches, so they were like basically square foot type numbers. But they were based on estimates from professional estimators. They weren't just
their estimates just off half a million dollars.
The
estimate in June is $500,000 off from the estimate in December.
Yeah, exactly.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And once again, the December is an estimate.
Yes. Estimate based on the schematic design drawings that has been developed over the past few months.
Yeah, a much more detailed estimate. Well, you've seen that. Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It's been bothering me for a while.
Yeah, I think maybe to think about it is this target project cost is the number we don't want to go over, right?
Well, I get all that. I just wanted to know where that number came from.
Yeah.
And if it's an estimate in June and it's an estimate in December, the delta is $500,000, and we're pulling our hair out for an estimate, not a hard cost. And so this is a great exercise to do anyway.
Right, and none of these will be hard costs until we actually go out to bid.
Exactly.
Right? So, okay. So based on the designs, Doran, Whittier, and Compass had identified approximately $2.4 million worth of potential savings. we took those, if you recall, and sort of divvied them up into different working groups. The working groups met these past couple weeks. So the first group was the site working group. And these are the 4 sort of areas that they looked at. The first one, I'm not going to run through these because we're going to take them one at a time now, but just to give you a sense, these are sort of the 4 things that we looked at. And now taking them one at a time, the first one was landscaping. As you recall, there was a line item in the landscaping. I think the budget, the allowance for landscaping was about $425,000. The design team recommendation was to cut that in half and basically create 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. And literally phase 1, I think is, costs $203,000 and phase 2 costs $224,000. So I think they just took that amount and split it. The site working group discussed this and said, we really need the landscape architect to weigh in here because no one really knew what $200,000 versus $400,000 of landscaping looked like. So what we have here, what you're looking at is a plan of the phase 1, what we're calling the phase 1 landscape. The landscape architect basically came out and said, this plan on its own, just like this, will make people happy, right? All of these dots are trees and shrubs, and the different colors represent sort of where the tree is located. So like a yellow dot means it's on the street, an orange dot means it's on the parking lot. So I think just for our purposes, we can just look at all the dots at once. And these are where the new trees will be planted. Now, this is what $200,000 gets you. This is what $400,000 gets you. So I think what the design team and what the site working group eventually sort of is recommending to this group is to do this in phases, right? To include phase 1, the $200,000 in the base bid plan, and to take phase 2 as an alternate. And from what I understand, and Tim and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, or Rob, it seems that in a lot of projects, it sort of, as you get toward the end of the project, there is more money for landscaping. So, and this is something that you can add at the end, toward the end of the project. So taking it as an alternate to add more trees seems reasonable, and still saving us $200,000 initially until we do get those hard bids coming in. Did I miss anything, Rob or Don or Tim or Chin?
I think what's important, Maya, is we'll have it designed into the project with the full value, and we can use strategies such as bid alternates to potentially fund it on bid day. And if not on bid day, you still know the value, so you could fund it later in the project, depending on where you are with your overall budget.
Right, and I think landscaping is one of the few things where you can do that, right?
Absolutely.
That you can sort of at the end throw in trees if you have some money.
Correct, and we would have had planned for it already, so it's not like we'd have to do any redesign to make that happen.
Right, or any soil prep or anything. The master plan that we go with would contemplate adding the full amount of trees.
Yes.
So I think the recommendation here is to take the credit of $224,000 and that's what we're calling phase 2. So we would take the credit and add it as an alternate. And I know it's a little tough to visualize what all these trees look like, phase 1 and phase 2. So but again, this is something we can review later. Anyone have any questions or comments? Because I think now is when we're going to be discussing each of these.
I think it looks better with half the amount of trees around the parking lot there.
Good. Well, that saves us money. Okay.
Excuse me, Maya, this is Chris.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually had a question for the previous slide.
Okay.
Something that I just,
this one?
No, going one more back, please.
Uh-huh.
Okay, another one, I'm sorry. Yeah, so can someone just explain to me when it says items included in reconciled cost estimate, but then I look at the second to last bullet, it says possible access road connection. Is that included or not?
That's included, right?
Yes,
Rob?
yes.
Those are remove possible, I think.
So,
yeah, those are all items that at the time that it was under consideration as a possibility, and then later determined yes, it needs to be added. And so it is now included into the project.
Yeah,
So
and dropping possible.
So just possible shouldn't be there, that's all.
Right, we can
Okay.
remove the word possible.
Correct.
That's a good point, Chris. It's not.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to, so this is the sort of the rest of the site plans, and these are numbered, so I'll take them as they go. So number 2, as you can see in this design, the designers included an amphitheater where that arrow is pointing right here. And in order to construct the amphitheater, they included the cost of these precast seating units to make up the seating units of the amphitheater. 2 groups reviewed this, the site group and the educator group. The educator group decided that an amphitheater isn't really necessary. It's sort of a nice to have, but it's a little unclear how much use it would actually get from a practical perspective. And so they came out and said, we don't really need this amphitheater. And the site working group said, given the educator's analysis, clearly we should do sloped grass here instead of precast units. And actually we should go further and ask the designer to look at this space and maybe even redesign it with the idea that we don't necessarily need the amphitheater. So because of this, the entire cost of the precast units, which is about $166,000, would come out of the project. So that's a proposed credit as well. And that's the recommendation of the educator group and the site group. Any questions on the amphitheater? Okay. Number 3, there was in the budget $75,000 for planter beds and curbs at the entry. They did serve they did have a purpose. You know, they were here to really, well, first to be pretty, but also to prevent, you know, cars from kind of driving up onto this entry plaza. But I think the site group thought that $75,000 for that seemed extreme. And so the budget was dropped to $35,000 and a $40,000 credit was taken here. And I think even that 35, we're going to look and see, you know, what do we really need for planters here? Do they have to be even $35,000? But we initially started with a $35,000 budget, dropping from 75 to 35, taking a $40,000 credit. Any questions there? That's the recommendation. Okay, and finally, there were a number of areas where the design team proposed reducing the quantity of granite curbing and replacing it with wood guardrails. So, and this is actually a change from the site. When we originally had the site group, a lot of this area was proposed to be orange, which would be the wood guardrails. And when the design team went back to the cost estimator, the cost estimator said, because of the stone you have to add for drainage purposes under the wood guardrails, it actually turned out to be more expensive than the granite curbing. So the recommendation from the design team is to go back to putting the granite curbing in all of these areas. The granite curb, I don't think, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have any wood guardrails anywhere here anymore. Is that right?
Right. There's none here, and you know, we can certainly revisit certain locations in design development, but we decided to go with a lower cost option.
Right, and that was originally proposed. The granite curbing is very durable. It stands up to plows and it stands up to shoveling, and so that was why it was proposed initially. And so now it's actually gone back in as the less expensive option. So that is a change from the site group. I just want to be clear. So that's, and that's,
sorry, May I get booted off. My internet failed. So
oh, no worries. So John, remember how we talked about adding wood guardrails to save money? So it turns out that the wood guardrails plus the stones needed for drainage is more expensive than the granite. Oh. So the design team is recommending going back to granite.
Good check.
Yep. And then the other thing is in the back, it was proposed to replace concrete with asphalt. Asphalt is less expensive. And we decided that the site group's recommendation is to do that only in areas that are not heavily trafficked and heavily plowed, because asphalt will crumble with a plow. And so the back of the school in the play area seemed the best area to try and take that savings. And that's what the site group is recommending here as well. So all in, oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? And I thought I probably was zoning out in the site group meeting. But I thought we weren't doing any asphalt. And I guess my question is, wouldn't we be plowing the playground? I guess I want to know two things. How much money does that really save? Just that back asphalt? And would we not be plowing the playground for they could use it in the winter?
So I'm going to ask Ken to speak to whether or not we plow the playground. And I'm going to
Yes,
ask.
We
do.
plow all
Okay.
playgrounds for use during the school day.
Okay. And so Rob, do you know how much that specific savings is?
I can look while we're talking here.
Just the asphalt.
I want to say it was, I want to say it was like in the $30,000 range, maybe.
And this is not curbing, this is the actual walking surface.
Yeah. If you guys want to continue on, and then I can circle back with it.
Okay. Yeah, and I have to run. I have a work meeting. I might try to get back on, but I mean, leave it to the group to decide. But I just, for $30,000, if it is, to Ken's point, being used, we want it to be functional in the winter. I don't know. I guess I just don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish on that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So let's
Yeah. Isn't that lower walkway, that's also the emergency access to the back of the building, correct? So that's going to be plowed as much as anything else.
Rob, is that right?
It will need to be either shoveled or something so that people can
It won't be shoveled.
get out of the building.
It's not going to be shoveled. It's going to be plowed. That's a long walkway to shovel.
I mean, you need to get out of the building, out to the roadway. All of the paths up and around for the playgrounds, which I doubt that the playgrounds would be used in the wintertime.
Okay, well, Rob, if you can get us that number. So why don't we'll circle back to this one. I'm going to make a note. We'll circle back to this.
I did have one question, Mayor. On the concrete, is it better for the kids to have blacktop instead of concrete? So if they fall, concrete is rougher on them? That's just a question.
Yeah, that I don't know. Anyone know the answer to that? It's a mystery, John.
What are the current playgrounds? The current playgrounds are asphalt, not concrete, right?
Correct.
They're not concrete.
And Ken, are they holding up to plowing as far as you know?
Some are, some aren't. It also depends. Once asphalt starts to crack, I mean, you can look at some of our basketball courts. They're just in tough shape. So
23,000 is the value. Changing the sidewalks.
23,000. Do we want to put concrete back in here?
And I'm curious what you're thinking about this issue, because I feel like you're going to be directly dealing with it. 23 grand.
Well, I mean, I think that the play areas are normally asphalt, but I know I'd have to think about it. I mean, we do both. I mean, concrete can, once you start putting salt and stuff on concrete, then that's going to deteriorate and break down as well. So I don't know.
I was just thinking, the reason why you use blacktop instead of concrete on a basketball court is because it's better for the kids when they go down, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. If I could just add, when we look at these cost estimates, what I'd really like to see is the sustainability piece of that. I mean, we're having these questions now, but I think when I see an estimate of replace X with Y, when we do that, I'd like to know, if we're going to replace Y, what are those long-term costs? It's if we're going to have to, if it's not going to hold up well, or it's going to hold up differently, then I'd like to know what are those costs, because, what I don't want to do is move that cost from one place to the next, which is, let's take it out of construction and put it in sustainability. And in the case of sustainability, it's not only just a cost, but it's a cost to Ken's ability to manage all the facilities. So just having those questions up front, if we're going to go ahead and look at a cost to be moved, I think we need to consider that as part of the cost. So if there's a later on cost, let's understand that and budget for that later.
Yeah, and I think, and we have sort of had those discussions, that's why we went with the granite instead of, there was a proposal to do more asphalt and we said, no, we know that will be a higher cost for maintenance and we didn't want to take that on. So we've definitely had those. I think the asphalt question here is a little, is sort of, it's a closer call than the others, asphalt versus concrete in the back. So, I do want to make a decision on this. So, and I do need to move us along. So can
I just chime in quickly? I just heard kind of there may actually be a safety issue and
with the concrete. Yeah.
Right. With the fall. And I will say, ironically, I actually have had 2 kids who have slipped and fallen on the wet surface and gotten mild concussions during recess. So if the asphalt is in fact going to be a softer surface, I think that's a major consideration to have.
Yeah, I agree with Mary Kate. I think that we use asphalt now. It is a small savings, but it is a savings. And, I just kind of think from my preference, we should just stick with the asphalt back there. If it's a softer, safe, surface for the kids, to me, that really is the most important.
Yeah, I agree. If I had to pick one, I'd stay with the asphalt in those areas.
Does anyone disagree with the asphalt? Okay, so we're taking the savings on that. So all told, for the site working group, we came up with about $586,000 in savings, which is great, which actually hits the target, and we still haven't even gotten into aesthetics. So I'm just going to move on. If anyone has any questions on this, we can certainly circle back, but let's move into the aesthetics, because as you can see, there was a lot more to talk about with the aesthetics working group. So first I'm going to show the things that we did take. Okay, so this is the roof screens. As you can see on the picture on the left, there is a roof screen on the roof hiding the mechanical equipment. The picture on the right, there is no roof screen. These screens cost about $106,000. And the aesthetic group said, I'm either looking at a gray big box or I'm looking at 2 gray smaller boxes. So there didn't seem to be much of a difference made by the roof screen, particularly for that cost point. In addition, I think you really only see these roofs, the mechanical equipment on the roof, if you're at the angle where we are, which is elevated standing back from the school. And most people will not be at that angle. So for that reason, the aesthetic design group is recommending eliminating the roof screens and saving the $106,000. Any questions? Okay, the second thing that they took, this is a bigger issue. We talk about the rain screen system, but what we really are talking about is the exterior material of most of the building. So as you recall, the initial design had what we were calling Prodema, which has a wood-like look. Things to note about this, it's a very sort of more modern look, but the thing that gave the aesthetic design group pause is that it's a new product. It's only been in use for about 10 years, and consequently, the manufacturer warranty is only for 10 years. They are saying it's a 50-year expected lifespan, but again, it hasn't been tested, so it is a new product. To see it in action, I think the Sunita Williams School used this product. And clearly it's a beautiful product, but the design team the aesthetic group was worried about the durability of it, particularly compared with the other option, which is this Terra Cotta. The Terra Cotta is a tried and true material. It has a 75-year warranty, which includes the color. They will warrant that the color won't fade. And it is used in a lot of places. So it's a much more tested product. It also would result in a savings of $326,000. It's a different look, right? This is more of a rustic look. This is the New England Conservatory of Music building that has used it. And so what I'm going to show you next are some pictures that will show you both on our design. So this is the Prodema, the front of the school. And this is the Terra Cotta. And as I said, it's a different look. It's more of a rustic look. It's more of a woodsy look for the Terra Cotta. The Prodema is a little bit more modern. It's a little cleaner. Mm-hmm. This is
the very orange. The prior slide, Maya.
This slide?
No, yeah. Right, where are you going now?
Yeah.
Compared to the conservatory?
Oh, yeah, and the color might not, I mean, I think, and Rob, can you speak to the color? I'm not sure this is.
Yeah, I mean, there's adjustment that we can make in the rendering to reflect the actual colors. I mean, there's a wide range of colors available. And so I wouldn't focus too much on the exact color because there's a lot of flexibility with this terracotta tile.
Yeah, so this is.
No, I wasn't talking about the terracotta. I was speaking
Right,
to
this
this. Oh, that is the terracotta.
This is the
Sorry.
terracotta, yeah.
You'd move to the other slide. Because I do think that matters to the look of the building. I don't like how this looks, and it's probably because of the color.
Yeah, so the color is, there's multiple colors of the terracotta. It really should be, you know, more of a looking at the style as opposed to the color.
Yeah, we can make the adjustment in the rendering. It's not looking like.
And I know, and Don, I know that you had some thoughts on the terracotta. I think it was actually, you had said it was your preference. Do you want to sort of explain why?
Sorry, you talking to me?
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was Don or John, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Don.
Yep. Yeah, I think, you know, with the idea of the school in the woods and this building coming up out of the ground, the terracotta, actually, I think both materials were great, first of all. The terracotta being essentially a masonry product is something that will have a longer lifespan, not that the other one's going to fail or anything. And I think what happens here is some of the shadowing and the variation in the texture will add some life to the facade here too. So it's not something we had considered earlier because we really liked the idea of the Prodema. We've studied this further. We actually think you'll be even more happy with the building when it's all said and done from a design perspective.
Thanks, Don. And you know, and I was, to be honest, I'm a little nervous about using the Prodema just because it only has a 10-year warranty and it hasn't been tested in the market. And I really don't want to get a phone call 15 years from now because the color of the school has faded or, you know, something is wearing out. We won't have that issue with terracotta. And I think that, anyway, what do other people think? Anyone from the aesthetics group or someone who wasn't at the aesthetics group? I can kind of go back and forth between the two pictures if you want.
I'll weigh in. I liked the Prodema myself, but the fact that this has a 75-year warranty, I guess
that matters.
It matters, exactly.
It does, yeah, but I did like the other one better, so.
I agree with Josefa. I like the other one better, but I think the warranty is too important to discount.
And there were some suggestions made with the detailing at the top of the roof and some other areas with the terracotta shingles that I think Rob,
during the aesthetic group, one of the comments was to better define the roof edge, so it provides a better termination to the Prodema. And again, you know, we have design development to continue the detailing and color selection and so forth. You know, the idea here is that, you know, this again extends the idea that it's a school in the woods with a stone, and this is more of like a bark, you know, type appearance. And so, yeah, we can do things to the roof edge to help provide a better termination for the shingles.
Great. Any other comments on this? Nope. Okay. Moving on, this is reducing the size of the solar shade on the east and west. Again, this is something we took. So this was the original plan. If you look at the gray solar shade on those bank of windows, and now in the next picture, this is the new proposal. The design group, the aesthetics group actually liked this better. It looked less clunky. It looked less cumbersome to the aesthetic group. And so this was sort of an easy decision to recommend to take this reduction. Does anyone have any comments on this? I can flip back again. Nope. Okay. Again, reducing the size of the solar shade, this time at the library. So we're going from this thicker solar shade to, I think this is Rob drawing in a thinner solar shade. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't have time to get it into the full rendering. So.
All right, so just picture that thinner bar and ignore what's on top of it. But again, it's a smaller look. It's a more streamlined look. And then finally reducing the size of the solar shade on the southern classrooms. And Rob, can you speak to this? Because I don't think the photo is you can't really tell from the photo what's happening here.
Sure, yeah, so this is just narrowing up the thickness of the solar shade element. So it's that horizontal band at the very top that's over the classroom wings. And so we're reducing that in size. Initially, we had insulated the whole thing, and after further analysis, determined we really didn't need to, that we can address that at the termination points. And so, so reducing the overall square footage of the surface area really attributes to the cost savings.
And that's about
shouldn't affect any of the
functionality,
solar shading of the class.
Right. And actually, that's a good point. For all of these options, 5A, B, and C, the function is not affected, right? It's just the design, the look of it, which is why these were sort of easy to take for us. Particularly, I think this is $168,000. I'm not even sure anyone would notice the difference.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think this is something that the design team would have done anyway in the process, and they're just informing us that this is a wise thing to do.
Right.
Okay, any other questions on the solar shades? All right, moving along. Here's another one we took. The trim around what we're calling the storefront systems, which is sort of the bank of windows in front of the media center and the cafeteria. The bank of windows, if you look at the right-hand bottom picture or the top picture, that's sort of what we're looking at. Originally, it was estimated to have the wood trim on the left. The aluminum trim on the right is what the aesthetics group decided to go with. I just think the wood trim would have been nice, but again, we were thinking this is one of 4 elementary schools, probably don't need the wood trim, and you could save some money. And so that's why the aesthetic group is recommending to take the aluminum instead of the wood. Any questions on that? Okay. And finally, I think this is the last one we took. The original design had spec'd polished ground-faced block in the stairwells. Okay, so it's this sort of top pictures, which is the shiny, almost granite-looking blocks. And the design team is recommending to instead go with painted concrete blocks. Now, the picture on the left is very ugly. I acknowledge that. So let's look at the picture on the right. And I will say, and Ken, I'd like you to weigh in here because, this is just in the stairwells, and Ken had a clear preference for the painted concrete block, as I recall. Is that right, Ken?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's easy for us to maintain. It's easier for us to paint and change colors if the school wants to go that way. So it's all around, it's just easier for us.
And I think this is one of those things that if we had started with painted concrete block in the stairwell, no one would have noticed that it wasn't polished ground face block. So I think that's another reason. Again, it's a stairwell. Kids are going up and down, heavy traffic, and not a sort of very forward-facing area of the school. So that's why the design.
I'm confused. It says that the polished ground face is easier to maintain and painting's not required. How is it that, maybe it's for Ken, how is it concrete block becomes easier to maintain? I mean, I don't think changing color is the issue. So which is easier to maintain? I think that's the one we should go with.
I mean, I can only speak for the concrete because that's what we have everywhere. It is easier if they want to they can't hang anything in the stairwells anyway, but it is easier to put a mural on a mural, as some of the schools want to do that, and they have done that. Change colors. It's just easier for us.
And
I don't think it's a maintenance issue.
Can I make a comment that just quickly? I'm not sure that polished ground face block is easier to maintain. Yes, you don't have to paint it, but if kids mark it up, it's a lot more difficult to clean. We've had this issue on other. You have sometimes you have to actually go in and ground it to get to bring out the. So I'm not sure that everyone would say it's easier to maintain versus just sending in a painting crew, for instance, to paint.
Thank you, because I'm reading one thing and hearing something else, and I couldn't reconcile it. I think we should go with what's easiest.
Yeah, I think the painted concrete block provides the school with more flexibility.
Yeah.
And what they can do, and probably is known to the maintenance team of how to manage. So. Anything else on this? Nope. Okay. All right. So these are things that were not accepted. This canopy outside the library. So this is, to provide the shaded area and this area is intended to be used for classroom instruction or even for breakout spaces. The educators also weighed in on this, and they said this was okay to reduce in size, but they really need shade if it's going to be a functional space. And from what I understand, reducing the size wouldn't have resulted in very much savings. Is that right, Rob?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So I know that it says, we could reduce the size or consider as an alternate, but I think the aesthetics group said, you know what, let's just keep this in the plan because without the sunshade, without the canopy, this space is not as functional as it could be. And I'm not sure people would use it.
Right. I think that's the key, is that we could, cut it in half, but then it wouldn't address the educators' concerns of providing ample shade.
And I don't think it would result in too much savings. So this was not accepted. Does anyone want to have any thoughts? How are we doing on time? Another one that was not accepted was to simplify or reduce this long entry walkway canopy. This, I know, I think there may have been comments from maybe in the public that this seemed excessive, this long walkway, but I think what this does, it serves both a design and a functional purpose. The design is clearly driving people or leading people directly from the parking lot to the front door visually. And it also breaks up that big expanse of the gym on the right. It sort of creates this visual interest there. And functionally, that's the drop off. It sort of terminates into the bus drop off. And so we have teachers out there during bus drop off in the morning and bus pickup in the afternoon. And if it's raining or if it's snowing, this canopy would provide some much needed shelter for the teachers to stand out there and for the kids to stand out there waiting for the buses. So it's both functional, it's both and design, and sort of a design feature. It is a lot of money, but I think cutting it in half, the design group, the aesthetics group thought would look a little strange. Like, you've got this long walkway and only half of it is covered. It also doesn't serve the functional purpose anymore, or at least one of the functional purposes. So for those reasons, the aesthetic group decided not to accept this, this value engineering option. And if I'm misspeaking from the aesthetic group, if anybody, please chime in. I'm, if I'm not summarizing something right, or if I'm missing something.
I just wanted to add, Maya, that we did, the group did agree that Dorn Whittier, during design development, will look for ways for reducing the height and doing some simplification to bring the cost down.
Yes.
So, we did agree to, keep that on our list of things to continue to look at. And also, I will add that 384,000 includes the larger entry canopy at the main entrance as well. So the whole thing is not just that extension that extends out.
Okay. So there could still result in some savings here, particularly if we simplify the design. But the concept of keeping the walkway from the front door all the way to the parking lot, I think that's what we're saying is important to keep.
I was going to echo that, Rob. I think this is one where it's kind of probably all in the detailing, and there could be a wide cost range between what this element is, but I think it could be beautiful and rather simply designed too.
Great, thanks, Brian. Any other comments on the walkway? Okay, this one, it says not accepted, but really what we're doing with this one is actually wanted to talk about it with this group. So the field stone is what is in the base design and is, I think, the preference of the designers. We could replace it with brick, and the possible brick options are shown here, 1 and 2. And again, we shouldn't get, I was getting hung up on the color. And as Rob told me, don't get hung up on the color of the brick because there's all kinds of colors of brick. But this is an example of so here's the field stone. And you can see part of the building is already spec'd to be in brick, the sort of the classroom areas. This is what a rendering of it with the brick. We really, the aesthetic group really wasn't sort of said, this really needs to be kicked out to the bigger group because there just wasn't, I don't really know what to say about the brick.
I'll say what I said at the meeting that we had. And I think that this is a building that we're hopefully going to have for 50 to 75 years. And the first option, I just think is much nicer looking. And I know that it's not an inconsequential amount of money, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, I think we should go for something that's going to look the best for that amount of time.
Yeah, I think, and I think one of the design element here, like if we're talking about why are we thinking about fieldstone, is because I think, and maybe I should turn this over to Robert Don, but I think the idea is that this is sort of mimicking the woods, right? You're starting with rocks at the base, like you would in the woods. And then as you move up into the trees, and that would be the terracotta, the bark look like product. And so the fieldstone really is capturing that idea of the woods, the school in the woods, or that this school is the woods. Did I get that right, Rob?
Yeah, exactly.
The brick, you wouldn't really have the same, it's certainly a stone product, but you wouldn't have that same.
I also think that since the decision's made to go with the terracotta, I think we need to use the material that works best with the terracotta. And if the design team agrees that it's fieldstone for the reasons Maya just mentioned, I think that's a really important design decision.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting what the number is, the potential savings, 173,000. So it's not as significant as the terracotta, but it's not.
But we're living with this look forever.
We are.
But Rob and Don, do you feel that given the terracotta choice, how strongly do you feel about fieldstone with it?
Our whole entire team really thinks that the fieldstone is the way to go. It just offers that sort of balance of texture and color and variation in the stone to balance with that sort of wood bark sort of feeling up above. When you go to a brick down below, there are different options in terms of textures and shapes and so forth that we can go to, but in the end, it still doesn't. It's not going to look quite like stone, and so we feel that it is a key element of the design, and so our recommendation is to go with the fieldstone.
Yeah, Brian, I think. Oops, sorry, Brian. I think you hit it well. Also, the fieldstone with the terracotta works really well together as an element. The way the terracotta sits on top of that fieldstone, and especially when you look at this picture, when you see that inside corner of the fieldstone returning back to what is this kind of a backdrop, some of those classrooms are, which is a more of a monotone brick. It works really well together to help set off that fieldstone and terracotta as opposed to what you're seeing here now.
In some way, that right now that the recommendation is simply to keep the money in there and you don't have to make a decision, because quite frankly, a lot of these things really you need to look at the actual material in person in the sun, and which the design team will be doing later. And right now the decision is simply to say, okay, we'll keep the money in there. You don't have to make a decision on what it is. And then I'm also looking at the time that we do need to move this forward. So unless you feel you need to take that $170,000 out of the budget right now, we can move forward and just simply take that vote.
Yeah, I don't think we need to take. You'll see, we found a lot so far. So
yeah, let's look at the.
I would recommend unless anyone has any other thoughts on the brick. No. Okay. So this final one is changing the curtain wall to the storefront system. The design group the aesthetic group did not accept this based on the recommendation of Compass and of Doran Whittier. I think the curtain wall system is more durable. It's structurally more sound. It just seemed a very easy decision to stick with the curtain wall system. So unless anyone has anything specific on there, this is really more of a structural issue. And Compass and Doran Whittier were united in their recommendation to stick with the curtain wall. So the aesthetic working group at the end of the day found about $811,000 in savings. And you can see the credits. So the total, you know what? I'm going to turn it over to Emily because she's going to talk about the educators working group.
Okay, great, thanks. So actually the first two, Maya already talked about, that the educators working group accepted the credit for the amphitheater, and we actually thought functionally the shade was important for the steam canopy. So those are covered ground. We were asked to look at the sliding glass doors between classrooms and the extended learning areas. We talked about this quite a bit, and we feel strongly that the sliding doors are really important in terms of the instructional use of those spaces and how it would function. So we did not accept that. And then the AC, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time because the SBC previously voted to air condition the building, but I just had said that, you know, I wanted to make sure that we had really thought about that thoroughly. And after that discussion, we agreed that it makes sense to air condition the building. We do need it for our extended school year programming. But we also think there are going to be a lot of community needs and maybe some unanticipated future needs. So we think this makes sense. And then these two were not accepted. And so I can't speak very specifically to the grease trap issue. I don't know, Rob, if you want to.
Yeah, it's something that we are looking into. And it's something we can make a determination on that in design development.
Yeah, and this is for because it's the kitchen.
Because
it's
it's
just
a warming kitchen.
kitchen. It's not a
Exactly.
full functioning kitchen, so we may not need the grease trap. So that's TBD.
Right. And then for the lightning protection, we did get in touch with our insurance carrier, and they don't require it, but it is recommended. And in our conversations with Compass and Doran Whittier, they tell us that this is pretty standard now in new school buildings. And, you know, it would be helpful to minimize damage to equipment and systems in the event that there was a lightning strike. So we did not accept that credit. So this is actually a summary slide of everything that we've talked about today. And so the two in red were the ones we really wanted to review, but it sounds like we are, it sounds like it's the consensus of the group to go with the phased landscaping and also to retain the fieldstone for now, right?
Yeah.
So this summary slide then is accurate in terms of what we just talked about. So the proposed credit is about $1.4 million if, with all of those accepted options. And so if we go back sort of to our original target here, you can see that if we put in those recommendations from the working groups, then our revised base construction cost there is that $69,487 number. And that gets us 893,000 under that targeted construction cost.
Yep, and I think we are going to add phase 2 landscaping as an alternate. And do we want to add the brick instead of fieldstone as an alternate, or?
I feel strongly that should not be an alternate, because I think people might accept it just for cost reasons, and it's such really a small cost in addition to the whole project. So I was going to argue that later if you want to table that.
No, I mean, I'm happy to argue it now.
I think for the reasons we discussed today, basically, but that's my opinion.
I agree with Brian.
It's integral to the design of the entire project.
I agree. I have to say, I've seen this before, but still today, I had a pretty strong reaction when I looked at the fieldstone versus the brick. And the fieldstone feels important to me for the design.
Okay. Anyone disagree? All right. So I think the only alternate that we would add is the phase 2 landscaping. So we already added the UVC system for the air filtration as an alternate. So our second alternate would be the phase 2 landscaping. Okay. That's the end of the presentation.
Maya, I want to say what a great discussion and presentation, and to have that be the outcome, I think that's extremely positive, because people will look for excesses or issues, and the fact that this group has already come up with this level of downward adjustments is really outstanding.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a very good process. I think the working groups worked really hard. There was a lot of great discussion in the working groups, and, a lot of great discussion today. And I think that I'm really happy that we were able to find this. And honestly, I think it was relatively painless. I don't know about what everyone else thinks, but I didn't, I think that the decisions that we made, at least in my opinion, were smart decisions that the fieldstone would have hurt, right?
The integrity of the design, we don't want to lose the integrity in so many categories. Educationally, the quality of the building, the endurance of the building for 75 years. So many things are not being compromised.
Yeah, I echo those two. A great process, and I don't feel like there's much compromise at all. I would say that, and perhaps there's a plan anyway, this would be great information to communicate to the public at the appropriate time, that this was really thoroughly vetted, a lot of these options. And
yeah, and we are going to be having a community forum relatively soon, so I think this would be a good piece of it. Absolutely.
And I think when going through even the town meeting process this spring, as Carol was referring to earlier, I'm not using her words, but to get this back out in front of people in that forum and town meeting, this really speaks very well to the work going into making this a thoughtful and carefully evaluated project.
And there's a lot of examples in here about things that were considered for people who are concerned that the cost is driven up because of extravagance. I think there's a lot of examples in here that were considered and decided, no, it's not worth the cost to do that. So,
yeah.
Yep.
And Maya, just from a process perspective, we're identifying alternates now, but at a later time, then we would prioritize those alternates.
We would rank them. Yep. And then they would just accept them if there's money in the budget.
Hey, are you going to vote on this?
Yeah.
We are. I'd just like to say, I think a one-page summary of what we just did today would be very valuable to have for the town meeting and for other types of presentations. Just, I think sometimes you just talk about it, it goes over people's heads, but just a one-page summary of the effort made to cut back would be very valuable in the future.
Yeah, well, the slide I'm showing now is actually what we're going to vote on, and that is all of the proposed credits, the total of the 1.398268.
But number 8 is really got a 0 in that.
Right, and it does have a 0 in the total column.
Right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So I can say that we will. so the vote that we're going to take is to accept the proposed credits as shown in the proposed credit column, recognizing that 8 would be deleted, and that, and I think 1 would remain the same.
Yeah, so I'll move that.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion on any of the value engineering? All right. I'm going to do a roll call. Ken?
Yes, as shown on the slide.
Brian?
Yes, I vote to accept the recommendations.
Allison?
Yes.
Chris?
Chris had to leave.
Oh, okay. Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Mary Kate? She may have had to drop off. Jen?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Michelle? Did we lose Michelle? Tony?
Yes.
Oh, was that Michelle or Tony?
Nope, that was Michelle.
That
Yes.
was Michelle. Okay, great. I think Tony may have dropped off. Emily?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so the motion is carried. Okay, moving on to the rest of the action items.
Can I just ask a clarification here?
Sure.
This is a really important vote. Is it possible to get the votes of the people who had to drop off, or is that not possible?
So we're talking about Chris, Mary Kate, and Tony, right?
No, you can't. I don't think you can.
I don't think we
from a
can.
public meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
But they won't be shown as a no vote. They're just absent, right?
Absent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
They'll be shown as absent.
But they didn't object throughout the whole meeting for any of the things we just voted on.
Good point. Thanks.
Right. Okay, moving on to voting the invoices. Let me, oops, you know what? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can pull up the invoices.
Maya, if I could just quickly.
Sure.
I just want to make sure. So we're going to incorporate this new construction number into the Form 3011 as the total project, because that's a major submission that we need to do
to the MSBA.
The MSBA with this project scope and budget. So with those numbers now agreed, we can complete that total project form and send, and we need to get this in front of the committee and have them, approve that when we include it in the package. So I think we talked about that, but that's the next meeting we want to have, right? I just want.
Yeah, so at the next SBC meeting, what we're going to do is we're going to vote the entire project budget.
Right.
That's at the February 5th meeting.
Yeah.
And that vote will then be submitted to the MSBA as the project budget, and that's what they're going to base their reimbursement.
Yeah, so that'll be,
Number
it'll
on.
be subject to their agreement, and we will get some back and forth with them, so it will not be the final, but that'll show the town share and the caps and how they work and the soft costs and all that stuff.
Can I ask one question on that?
Sure.
So you have two alternates right now. Are you going to include those in the total?
There's a form in the and there's a spot in the Form 3011 for alternates, and it essentially decides whether you want to include them in the budget or whether you want to have them not included in the budget but available. And so we'll probably bring that up as part of the presentation. Well, for now, we'll include them, I think, in the budget, but that's a good.
Yeah, and we'll go through all of this at our next SBC meeting, because we will be voting on it at that meeting.
I just want to make sure it didn't get lost in the shuffle if he's going to put
It'll
it
be
on now,
noted.
that we couldn't put on the UV
Yeah,
protection.
no, definitely. Actually, and here's a question. Before, we had always sort of presented a budget, given the SBC about a week to review it and come up with questions, and then the next week we would vote on the budget. Right now, we only have a February 5th meeting scheduled, so we would have to have the presentation and then vote on the same day, because we can't wait till our next meeting on March 5th.
We can get it out.
Do people
We can get it out though next week ahead of time.
Yep. So we can get the information out to you ahead of time. We just wouldn't have a presentation on it until the day that we vote. Would people prefer to schedule an additional meeting so we have a week between, or do people just want to are people comfortable voting on it on the same day that we actually discuss it?
I still have my ever non-ending issue about the contingencies, so I'm concerned that We may need time between discussion and vote.
And that's typically how we've done it. So I don't want to, you know, change the process on us here. So if people are okay, maybe we'll schedule a meeting for the next Friday at 8 a.m. So February 12th, I think we're looking at. And then we can, you know, we'll present February 5th. We'll have the meeting February 12th for the vote. That shouldn't be, you know, we can discuss, but, and then that gives us still time to submit and talk to him.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if that's okay. Okay. I'm moving now to the payment of the invoices. So in front of you, you have two invoices, one for Compass for $16,443 and one from Doran Whittier for $58,294.10. These are still, you know, within the budget that we have allocated for these two services. Does anybody, can I get a motion to approve these two invoices totaling $74,737.10?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Brian, Allison, Sarah,
Yes.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Pam, Jen,
Yes.
Abby, Nancy, Lemma,
Yes.
Josepha, Carol.
Yeah, top off.
Okay.
Yes.
Michelle, Emily,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Motion is carried. And finally, where's my agenda? We need to vote to approve the school building committee meeting minutes of December 11th, 2020. Can I get a
So moved.
motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Ken,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Abby, Nancy,
Yes.
Lemma, Josepha,
Yes.
Carol. Oh, Carol jumped off. Michelle,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Motion is carried. Okay, is there any new business?
I just want to ask when we can have a meeting we talked about regarding the grass versus upgrade to a turf field.
Oh, yes, we were going to take that offline, right?
Yes.
I will set that up.
Thank
Nancy,
you.
who would you like to be at that? Or you're not, you know what? Just Chris from
Yep.
your end?
Yep.
Okay. Chris and Nancy. All right, apologies, I will set that up.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Nope. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ken,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Abby. Oh, is Abby gone? Oh, there she is. Oh, okay. Nancy,
Yes.
Lemma,
Yes.
Josepha,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We got through a lot of material today. I really appreciate the discussion and everyone's time, as always. 15 minutes late.
It's work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Nice
Have
job,
a great
Maya.
weekend. Bye.
Thanks.